Hello. So we're just waiting a couple of minutes for people to join, not to worry. We will be starting. I'll do a quick intro and then we'll be able to pass over to the speakers. In the meantime, feel free to put any questions in the chat. Thank you. Okay, we'll get started. So thank you everyone for joining this webinar. Been really looking forward to this for a long time. I've been working with London Tech Leaders for years, and the fact that we're getting to do webinars now is very good, very exciting. I think this is one of the first London Tech Leaders webinars we've done since 2021 during the pandemic times when with the first event that I was involved in, LTL 6. Speaking of London Tech Leaders events, we're about to launch our 17th event, which goes live today. So feel free to head on to londontechleaders.io and you'll be able to find it there. It's all about low code, no code. And of course, Leapwork will be involved in that event also. So yeah, today's session is all about why ignoring test automation could be the silent killer of your digital transformation. I couldn't think of a more relevant topic, really. And we're working with Leapwork on this, which I'm really, really excited for. Speaking today, we've got Matt and James, who I'm going to bring on the stage in a minute. They've got a lot to say about this topic, and I'm looking forward to it. And I'm also aware there's a giveaway as well. So that will be in the private chat section. During the webinar, feel free to ask any questions in the chat itself. And yeah, that's all from me. My only ask would be go to londontechleaders.io and make sure to sign up for our upcoming event in May. I'm going to jump off the stage now and get the other people on. And yeah, enjoy the webinar.
So, good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me okay. So today we're here to talk about one of the paradigm shifts happening in enterprise cloud technologies, how the pace of innovation is causing bottlenecks for organizations, and why now people alone are no longer enough to solve these shifting technology trends. We'll talk first about why organizations are shifting their approach to quality, and then how, with my colleague Matt, we'll talk in technical detail around how they're deploying solutions and mindsets, and discuss whether poor software quality could be the silent killer of your digital transformation. And we'll bring up the slide deck. So, in terms of introductions, my name is James Funge. I've worked in the technology sector for the last 16 years, 6 of that spent at Gartner identifying shifting industry trends and therefore innovative technology approaches to solve key challenges relating to digital transformation. And we also have Matt on the call as well.
Yeah, hi, nice to meet you. I'm Matt. I've kind of been with Leapwork for coming up to 3 years now, helping people on this journey of automation, but I've spent a lot of time in the software development lifecycle trying to understand how people consume, use, monitor, manage, test applications through those core customer journeys. So looking forward to today's session.
Thank you, Matt. So before we get started, we want to ensure that ultimately everyone has the opportunity to have their say on this webinar. And at the same time, we're going to go fast. It's only going to be 20 minutes, but at the same time, incentivize participation. So to get those collaborative juices flowing, can all of you now go into the private chat and type one statement or sentence, something short and concise, and don't worry, these won't be viewed by everybody, something short and concise that essentially is what you're hoping to get from today's webinar, and also something that you're finding challenging as it relates to software quality or speed. In return, we'll pick a number of questions or comments at the end, and we'll ensure that a smart backpack makes its way to you as a thank you for your participation. So in quick fire round, if you can go into that private chat now, we'll give you 30 seconds and please type in the thing that you're most concerned about. So, and then we're going to flip to actually the content. So over to you, let's go. Thank you. Like a game show right now. Amazing. Right, I've seen some of the chat there. I think there's some great comments that have come in, and we'll try to address these over the course of the next 15, 20 minutes. And if not, we'll come back to them again. We're going to open things up for Q&A. And at the very least, if it's really pertinent, we can come back to it as a follow-up to this webinar. Okay, so why are we all here? What is happening in the software industry relating to cloud technology? I think ultimately the pace of digital transformation for everybody is changing. We've seen and experienced the migration from on-prem technologies to cloud-based. We've seen the burden of maintenance shift from us as the end customers over back to the software vendor. However, we're now starting to see a paradigm shift back to the end customer in the form of things like continuous improvement and updates, thus shifting this burden of quality and continuity back to us as the end customer. So this is both positive in terms of new features and functions getting in the hands of customers, but it's also providing some challenges and bottlenecks for organizations who are trying to find solutions to maintain these things that doesn't involve throwing lots and lots more people. So digital transformation is really equaling more software and faster. As a tangible example, and one that really affects lots of kind of different, big ERP, and hopefully one that's going to resonate with most of the audience here today, is we're going to highlight Microsoft. But equally, we could talk about SAP, we could talk about Workday. I think we all get the idea. So what have Microsoft done and why? Microsoft have moved their customers from on-premise to D365, a move that we know is ongoing across the globe right now. However, as end customers, we're always demanding new features and functions in our core systems so that we can improve ultimately the technology that we're using. And for the end customer, for Microsoft, there also has to be a solution that enables them to deliver these new features and functions at pace, but at the same time, not maintain thousands, if not tens of thousands of different instances across the globe. And this is ultimately called one version. So I brought up an example of, again, this Microsoft ecosystem. And what essentially one version is, it's a series of proactive quality updates starting in the start of the year with 10.0.38 and ongoing. And then, major quarterly updates. And essentially what this means for customers is we're on an N-1, essentially providing a lot more features and functions faster, but with no way for organizations to postpone this. So if you look through this slide, you'll see that we've gone from a very static environment to a very, very dynamic environment. But here comes the critical catch. Organizations really up until now have relied on testing new features and functions with technical solutions or code-based solutions. And you see the dynamic here for installed technologies. But if we're going through a new implementation, the problems are even greater, right? So we go through, as an example here, we're in one version of the update when we start our sprint of a new piece of technology from Microsoft, F&O in this case. But by the end of our sprint, if we skip the next update of 10.0.40, then by the time we get into sprint 5, we're already on a new version of the technology. And then, we go in and we retest that, we go back, but now we get into our integration testing. And then by the integration testing, we're also on a new version. So this is really a new dynamic for organizations. Essentially, with the way that the industry's worked, you've got either very static solutions that are very code-based, very code-heavy, or you've thrown people at the, at the testing dynamic because you've done these things maybe once or twice in a year maximum. Now this challenge is constant. And I think if we look at the impact that more software has had or having on the industry, and this problem is only growing, we're seeing now more risk. And we've seen very high profile cases of, the challenges that poor software quality, buggy software quality has had. One very high profile case with Volkswagen. And I think one that's maybe a bit closer to home and hopefully a long distant memory for all of us, which was the challenges we faced around COVID passports when quality issues entered that application, and then thousands and tens of thousands of people were stranded with no access to their COVID passports. So this is just maybe a frame of some of the things that we are seeing in the industry. And what we're seeing is a marked increase in speed of technology, but also at the same time, not dramatic increases in the people that are able to deal with this pace of change. So I think if I'm to summarize to you the overall challenge, testing is the solution, but up until recently, testing has also been the problem. So now we've framed that, I'm going to hand over to Matt, and we're going to talk through some of the technical ways that organizations are thinking about this paradigm shift. So Matt, over to you.
Thanks, James. So what we've understood there really is this digital transformation that has previously been optional is now being somewhat forced upon people, and they're going to have to adapt and change a mindset, maybe a strategy or a tool to adapt to that shift. So what does it really take to do that? That's really the question we're trying to answer and trying to solve here. So there's a couple of things really to consider. One, do we take a look at the tools we have to determine the strategy that fits it? Or do we first think about the strategy that's going to set you up for long-term success? And then secondly, and most importantly, really, it's this change in mindset that needs to be applied. So how do we ensure that quality of the digital transformation and everything it's put in place to bring is lived throughout the whole company and not just on the shoulders of a few? So James has already made the point that digital transformation often means more software, and that's not our own opinion. That's backed by Grandview research that predict the software market itself is going to grow at about 12% a year until 2030. We even saw a 28% growth between 22, 23. So what we're really learning from all of this is that there's going to be more pressure on already stretched teams to deliver quality and make sure that those quality levels don't drop as the requirement for new software grows. So let's take a little zoom out from all of that and take a look at what that means. So how do we organize quality today? If we think about the last 15, 20 years, because it hasn't really changed over that period of time, it's been pretty static. And it looks like this, and some of you here today might recognize this. So what you will often have is a large, centralized, highly skilled, highly technical team that are quality experts. They often have automation skills and they own that entirely. So they are responsible for the quality and a number of business applications, despite not really being users of them or even involved in the day-to-day running of maintaining them. So those people will speak to the people in the business that do understand those applications, the user journeys that take place on them, the expected results when they're working well, the happy parts, the negative parts, and try to build out a number of tests to satisfy those requirements. Effectively, building out what we really see is a translation layer between those people that can do quality and understand the business. But this isn't really the most efficient way of doing things, right? It turns into a bit of a game of ping pong, backwards and forwards between these two groups of people. Do you mean this requirement? No, it first needs to go through and check an order for warehouse B rather than warehouse C. Okay, let's go back and rewrite that. And this backwards and forward means that it's not very efficient for a number of reasons. The back and forth being the obvious one. But secondly, the skill set it takes to maintain this team on the left and even grow that team. So as mentioned, this team are super technical. They often have developer-like skills, And that comes at a price. And then you've got to battle with the fact that these people with those skills might want to move out into developer type roles to fit their skills. So kind of ask the question, really, as the new software demands increase, and we've already seen they will, can I hire more people into this team onto the left at an ever-growing rate and retain those ones that are there? Because the nature of these technical people is they like to learn and move on, but that creates this sort of culture of tribal knowledge. So as people leave that team, often a lot of the data and the knowledge does too. So really, is this the best model to adopt and adapt to that digital transformation and give you the confidence that you can consume that ever-growing rate of software without compromising on quality? So what we're starting to see is a bit of a tectonic shift away from a traditional model into something a little bit different. So a much smaller center of excellence, with the team only really being responsible for providing access to a quality platform and then maybe managing any integrations that are required. And I'll come into that a bit more shortly. So the same applications exist, the same requirements to test those, the journey is exactly the same. But this COE, and now rather than being a translation layer, act more as an enablement layer. So rather than having the 20 people on the left working with the 20 people on the right, what we would see is key users in each of those applications that do understand how they work, they know the business knowledge, what real user experience is. So why not give them the power to be able to manage and own quality themselves? So choosing this strategy first then enables you to pick a tool that maybe facilitates that and enables you to grow with that. So let's take a look at what that might look like. In this example here, we can see key users through all of the key applications responsible for their own tests, making a much more efficient setup. So that really allows us to think about the types of tools that exist right now. And this is traditionally what that looks like. So we see this example here, 3 ways to do test automation. So what I can see from this is it doesn't really lend itself to the everyday user. You know, I have to have some very specialist skills to implement this. I've got to understand some very specific languages that typically only a few people can do. So it really doesn't help with that explosion of software that we've seen. So the question now really is, what language is better suited to the everyday user if we want to think about increasing that? And the clue really here is thinking about what is quite probably one of the most universal languages in the world. And it's the reason why if I jump in my car today and want to drive over to Europe, to France or to Spain, I can do so very easily. And that's because the road signs that are on Central Europe versus the UK, where I'm based, are exactly the same. They are visual based, they are not textual based, but they are easy for anyone to understand, and they are, more importantly, the same everywhere we go. So tools like this that are taking that approach and have made that transition isn't really a new thing, right? This has been tried and tested in other areas. It just hasn't been applied to test automation yet. And if we think about the way the explosion in data and analytics we saw, that saw people move away from SQL store procedures and SQL coding, tables of data, to things like Power BI, a drag and drop visual interface to make it more accessible to everyone. Same is applied for website development. You know, I could go to Wix today, build my own website without having to have any of those technical skills. So really it's about applying that same ethos that we're seeing the transformation in other areas to enable people to really embrace that digital transformation. So what that might look like is something a bit like this. So this is that visual approach to quality that can be consumed by anyone. And it really tries to put the power into the hands of the people that understand the business best, so as they can own it and then take shared responsibility of quality. And it's not only allowing them to own it, but also increase the speed at which they can consume and execute it. So if I were to sort of pause on this, and I won't do this because I know it's like when you get called out on a webinar or anything, but if I were to ask anyone here today, what does this test do? You know, I'm pretty sure 99% of everyone here would be able to answer me, you know, and that's the power of it, because it is visual, you know. It creates this common language for all people, doesn't require an army of people to do, COE type technical people, and it uses that sort of flow chart, building block style approach. We connect together with arrows. Easy, intuitive, like cobbling Lego blocks together is the simplest way to think about this. So even though this might be the first time you see this approach to test automation, you can easily read what it's all about, right? The first step opens a browser of a certain type and goes to a page. Next block grabs some Excel contacts, takes the full name company, creates a new contact, and then we go through and validate that and pass that. And this really is the simplicity of how people are able to apply a new mindset to set themselves up for a more scalable and to get ready for that transformation that's coming. So who's making that shift, right? That's the next big question. So first of all, finance institutions. So traditionally, these people are, you know, the hardest, the last to change because they have a lot of legacy systems and processes. We're starting to see a real drive from these types of companies to better organize their quality. And one example that we can see on the page here, a recent mover, changed the way they were owning quality and achieved an 88% reduction in the time it takes to execute their testing. Automotive and retail, another big explosion recently. And we all know sort of the importance of customer experience right now. James talked through the VW Group example. And that really is a place where one bad experience online is enough to change someone's opinion about whether they go forward using that service. So more testing, more complete testing, thorough testing is extremely necessary. Manufacturing and pharma, right? Two highly regulated industries, yet have also seen value in changing their approach. So AstraZeneca, who are on this list, you know, their main goal, right, when we really boil it down, is to release new drugs to the market. And that typically is a very long process, as you can imagine, because of the quality assurance side of things and all the regulatory checks they need to go through. But they were able to take their, you know, frequency of ability to test, because more people were able to do it, from once every 12 weeks to every week. So this has untold number of benefits for them as a business, you know, getting to the market first, which is before the competition, that's market share, that's price setting, lots more things. And then lastly, we have some of the world's largest, innovative, recognizable technology companies, the likes of your Google, Amazon, even NASA, are starting to embrace this different, more collaborative way of approaching quality. So just by way of summarizing what we've walked through today before we open up the floor to the questions, you know, the way we consume applications is transforming again. James made that point at the very start. We've gone from on-prem to SaaS, which was some of the transformation seen, but now the transformation in those SaaS applications means updates are going to be forced with much less control about how you can consume them. Couple that with the fact that the software market is still growing, you know, 12% a year until 2030 means there's going to be much more to deal with. And the only way really to embrace that and to tackle that head on is to democratize that testing and put that into the hands of the people that know the expected outcomes, that can take some ownership and share that burden. So that's a nice point now to bring that background to the start point, revisit some of those questions that went into the chat, and open up the floor. So James, why don't you pick out the first question we've got, and we'll see how we can tackle that one.
Yeah, I think maybe a couple of questions here. I think first and foremost, one of the questions is, and maybe this is one for you, Matt, who do you expect to write test automation, and what do you see as the role for traditional test analysts in the new world? That's a really interesting question.
Yeah, so that is actually. So the answer with the first part, who do you expect to write the test automation? It's pretty much not anyone nowadays, but the pool has got much broader, right? Because it is that simple visual building block approach. So if I look at some of the recent, people that have built the test automation on our side, probably the most extreme example would be in the healthcare space. So a lot of patient record systems that would be updated by nurses and clinicians and healthcare professionals. They understand the applications themselves. They were actually the ones responsible for writing the tests because they knew it best, right? It does change that. For the traditional test analyst, what we've seen is it's a new way for them to expand their skill set, to increase their marketability. They are now turning into not just a manual tester, or maybe some of them are code-based testers, but a lot of the ones we engage with are manual testers, right? That want to break into automation that have never been able to. So this was a whole new skill set, a new way to advance their careers as well.
Yeah, I think a really interesting question. So we appreciate that. Any further questions from anybody before we hand back to Luke and the team? Okay, I think with that, thank you very much for listening. I think this is a really interesting, rapidly evolving topic, and it's only going to grow as the pace of innovation continues to increase. So we look forward to the next in this series. I think the no code, low code event. So I think team, will hand back to you. Thank you very much.
Hi, thanks guys. Thank you for that very much. It was very insightful. As we said, the low code, no code event's coming up, and obviously Leapwork will of course be there. It's going to be held at Zego's offices, and we'd love to invite everyone who's attended today to join the event. The list will, I'm sure, fill up in the coming weeks. I think last time we had an actual queue out the door at a London Tech Leaders event, so the easiest time to register is now. But yeah, thank you for attending, everybody. We'll be sure to follow up with comms afterwards. This whole thing will be recorded, posted on our socials, all that stuff. And thank you very much and have a nice day. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, James. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, Luke.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Bye.